Hi, everyone. Welcome again to today's breakout session. I'm Melissa from Miro. I oversee enterprise product marketing here, and I have Can Wang joining us today from Upwork, who will actually be walking through how to transform enterprise collaboration with a startup mentality. So we'll be doing a coffee chat in a bit, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to post them on the board. So again, it's right on the board. There's a slide there towards the end where you can actually drop in your questions. If you want to use the Slack channel, you can do that as well. We'll take those questions from there and put them on the board just so that we can answer those for you. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Miro, Miro is an online collaborative whiteboard platform. And we're actually in presentation mode right now. So as you noticed, I was on the board here. And if I zoom out, you can see everything there, and you can see the icebreaker at the top. And I can just jump right into playing a presentation directly on the board. And we've distributed and just remote teams in general have been using Miro since 2011 for a couple of different things. So collaborative remote meetings for customer journey mapping, PI planning and just org-wide planning in general, agile ceremonies, and brainstorming and ideation sessions. So especially in the last few months, we know it's been hard to collaborate as if you've been in the same room. And so here's a little bit of a video, an inside look at how Miro uses Miro. And this was something that we did actually at a company all hands where we did kind of a real-time brainstorm session. So you can see all of our cursors on here. There's about 80 users, 80 of us who are on here at the start of kind of fully working from home. And so we gave each other some tips and tricks of how to kind of stay productive and have more of a balance in our work and home lives as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Can and hear more about his journey to Upwork as a product designer. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them on the board. So Can, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thanks, Melissa. Hey guys, this is Ken. Super excited to be here today. I went to enterprise conference. I think in the past it's called enterprise design conference 2 or 3 times in the past 5 years in person. I believe it's the first time it's done virtually. So good to see you guys here. My name is Ken, currently product designer at Upwork, but I'll introduce my journey a little bit. So I was born and raised in Beijing. I was there before 2010. Came to the US in 2010, went to University of Michigan to study human-computer interaction. So I was there for 2 years. After graduation, I first joined NetSuite, which now is part of Oracle, the big enterprise companies. And that's also how I got to know this conference. I was there for 6 years. Working on both B2C and B2B products. And then after that, I just decided to do something. And that's when I joined Upwork at the end of 2018. I've been there about a year and a half, and I'll talk more about what Upwork is in a minute. Next slide. Thank you. So Upwork is basically, I call it like a marketplace platform for business and flexible talents. So where you usually like hiring managers come here to hire either freelancers to get their work done. So if you go to the next slide, and we will see some of the companies. Thanks. So some of the companies here who evolved at a particular time in a particular industry. So we see ourselves as the marketplace for work. Next slide. All right, I guess that wraps up my introduction.
All right, thanks so much, Can. Was there another slide that you were looking for? Sorry, I didn't want to skip over anything.
No, I think that was it.
Okay, great. All right, well, we'll just jump into the coffee chat. So we know we called it a fireside chat. We thought it'd be more fun to call it a coffee chat. So here is Can and I here in a coffee shop here. And so we're going to start off with just the first question here. You gave us, a very quick overview of your journey into product design, but what exactly is product design? We hear a lot about UX design, UX research, design in general. How has maybe product design evolved into what it is today?
Yeah, it's a great question. First I want to say kudos to whoever came out with the name or title product design. I think the title itself, is a game changer already, because we are shifting from designing UI UX to actually designing products. And me is also a learning experience to say, in the past we were hand over requirements and use cases and user stories, what have you, to say, hey, design the UI for this, make it pretty. And now we are in a space where we're actually thinking about what our product should be before we even start thinking about the UI part of it. What market we're in, who are our competitors, what do they do well or not? So how can we stand out? How do we measure success when we launch something? And also, how can we promote it when we launch something? How can we test it? How can we iterate on that? So to me, product design is more just thinking holistically as a product person rather than a design person. So that's one. Two, I want to say it also changed how we work. I think in the past, as I mentioned, we work more on the UI part, the UX part, and we're pushing pixels. And a lot of times work in our own space. Designers love to be focusing on the UI part when we're really in it. But now it's wide open and inclusive. You have opportunities to work with your marketing teams, the sales and support, in addition to your PMs engineers. So I think that also shifting in terms of mindset and also how we work.
Definitely. Yeah, we definitely see kind of that transformation across the board, kind of being brought in earlier into the process, not being handed something, but really being embedded early on. So you mentioned how important it is to kind of maintain this startup mentality. Startups are known for moving quite quickly, aren't super process oriented yet. There's many advantages and disadvantages to that. But startups typically lack either people, processes, tools, just resources in general. And a lot of these resources are things that enterprises typically have. And so in your opinion, just kind of from your experience and your journey to Upwork and even before, what do you find is usually the main blocker in kind of driving this type of collaboration across larger enterprises?
Yeah, I think one of the major blocker a larger enterprise is you have a very clean process. That's one of the advantage for some people, because how things has done in the past, what worked, what didn't work. But it also creates barriers to think out of the box to break those rules. So I think having some process is good, but don't marry to it. And what I find that actually working in a lot of startup-ish type of company is it really encourages people to be self-starters and to be proactive. So you have to take the lead either as a designer from the bottom up, or have a top-down approach that, as I said, motivate people who can break those rules. Don't just work with your product team, but actually reach out to sales, see what type of cost and meetings they're having with the customers, why your customer or prospects decide to buy your product or not. What's the deal breaker, what they really like about it. Reach out to the support team, because they are in constant interaction with your users, probably more than what the design team is doing. We, a lot of times doing interviews and testings, but we only do it sometimes when we need it, but like the support team, the success team, they meet with your users very often, if not every day. So they have a lot of say and insights you can use to make decisions for your design. So I think what I'm trying to say is don't marry to your process, really be proactive, do things people may not be doing, maybe even scared to do in some organizations, and try to find time to do it.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about those kind of first steps to reach out. I'm kind of curious to hear, what are your best practices to kind of improve collaboration, not only maybe between the product and design teams, as you mentioned earlier, but across the board? What have been the things that have really worked for you?
Yeah, so one program we have here at Upwork I really love is we call it the Voice of the Customer program, and is as itself is already a collaboration um, channel between the product team and other functional teams. So how it works is every month we meet between the product design and our sales success team. So we will talk about the major themes we've heard for this month or maybe even this quarter. So the sales team would prioritize those before coming to this meeting. They will list what are the problems, which customers are impacted, and how severe is it. So we'll have like 3 or 4 topics every month to go through. Sometimes is the same topic we talked about last month, but we want to make sure we are taking some actions on it. So we create this cadence for different partners to come together so that we can hear what our sales team is hearing from customers, so that we can take it to either prioritize our roadmap, or saying, okay, we already have on our roadmap. Here is when it may be launched or being addressed. So that's one thing that I really like, and I think really being working out. The second thing I would say, what the design team is specifically doing is being inclusive very early on. So that even starts with like discovering the problems and align with the teams. So I think it's super powerful to have some alignment between the product managers, the engineers, and the design team. So sometimes we call it the pod. In a lot of organizations, is to like align on the problems at the beginning. So who are we designing for? What are the problems? How do we measure success? How does success look like? So have those nailed down at the beginning of each project will save you a ton of time down the line, because you already have those questions answered, so that you don't have to going back to those when you're actually designing or coding certain things. So everyone on the same page. So you definitely try to be inclusive at the beginning. When you're doing the design part as well, try to include your engineers in like the brainstorming part. Be a facilitator. Try to get ideas from them rather than say, hey, here are all my design solutions. What do you guys think? Try to ask them to help you come up with ideas. And what I noticed in the past, when we have brainstorming sessions with engineers, they feel like their voice is being heard, and they feel like they're contributing to the final solutions. And a lot of the final solutions are actually their ideas. They're not just my ideas or the product manager's ideas. It's actually their solutions. So they feel really proud of being part of this. They feel like they're contributing rather than just being told to develop something.
Definitely. I just have 2 follow-up questions for the Voice of Customer program. So it sounds like there's a monthly cadence, right? And everyone kind of comes prepared. There's a prioritized list of topics. What about in real time? Is there anything that is happening kind of between those meetings that helps to surface some of those insights that come, in the 4 weeks leading up to the next meeting?
Yeah, we recently implemented a full story, which is actually sort of like a live tool where you can see like what's the customer journey on even like a daily basis. Right now we do it weekly because we try not to make decisions on a daily basis behavior, but every week you can see uh, like which part of your either website or app your customers are interacting with a lot or have a significant drop. You can even record their like uh, where they click, where the doing the eye tracking stuff. So there are different ways to keep track on that so that you don't have to wait for a month to make some informed decisions. So yeah, that's a new tool we've been trying.
That's awesome. And for the brainstorming sessions that you have with the engineering team, kind of bringing them in earlier, there's kind of this theme that I'm hearing is bring everyone in earlier, as early as possible. How does that brainstorming take place and what does that actually look like? So will you reach out one-to-one within your pods that you're working with a particular engineering team or engineers, and what are maybe some of the tools that have helped facilitate that kind of brainstorming in real time?
Yeah, totally. So we've been using Miro a lot for remote brainstorming, um, but I would say it actually happens before the actual brainstorming session.
Mhm.
So I typically don't reach out one-on-one. We have like Slack groups for the entire team, and the PM and I will usually do some prep work. So we'll talk about like what we're trying to get out from that brainstorming session. How long is the session? Is it 1 hour for just one day, or is like 2 hours every other day? It really depends on the scope and complexity of that project. So once we have that framework, we actually use Miro to start putting together that template and the agenda. So we'll share with the team, and we try to find a time that work for most of the people. So we have different time zones, so we have to try to make that work. But given we're all remote and have different time zones, we try to make it not last for too long, usually like 1 hour, 2 hours tops for each session, so that people don't feel like they're committing to like a full week sprint. So there's definitely a lot of prep work at the beginning, a lot of scheduling, hurdles we have to get through. But I would say once you get it done once or twice with your Scrum team, they kind of know how it's been run, and they just expect to do more of that, and things will be just much easier in the future.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I'm going to actually get out of presentation mode and see if we have any questions here. So I have one question for you. I think this is going back to the first question about product design. So what, in your opinion, is the difference between product managers and product designers? Do you see overlaps in these roles, and any tips on how to manage expectations here?
Yeah, I love this question. I joke with my PM sometimes saying, uh, I find 30% of my time are actually doing your work. But I actually enjoy it because it's a great learning experience for me because, as I mentioned in the past, I focus more on the UI and UX part,
Mhm.
but doing some of the PM work, I learned, how you do competitive analysis, how do you define success matrix that makes sense for a specific product and specific project. And I think the major difference is probably, PM, it's we hold them accountable in terms of like the roadmap, the top priorities we want to work on, although designers have a lot to say in that, but we hold them accountable in a lot of the kind of strategy decisions and how to kind of align with our engineering team. They are a very strong partner between design and other teams. And by that, I mean the sales and the success team in particular. And for designers, we're accountable for the design decisions, whether it's the UI, of course, but also what the experience outside the product, including the emails, notifications. So we're all like in charge of that. And it's pretty healthy relationship because we have a lot to say in terms of the product management piece, and the product managers have a lot to say in terms of the design decisions. So sometimes she will share the inspirations, examples with me so that I can brainstorm even more.
Got it. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that there's just a lot of collaboration that needs to happen more proactively. Just had a quick question on that. You know, as far as at Upwork, who is really accountable for driving the partnership? So there's definitely, you know, certain roles are held accountable to their areas of oversight, but as far as that partnership and collaboration piece, who's truly accountable for that at Upwork?
Um, I would say everyone. I think everyone is accountable for driving collaboration. I see most of the time is the product managers and the designers who are actually driving it, because we just see things more holistically sometimes than other partners. So we have more tendencies to, you know, include other teams when we feel like, okay, whatever we're working on may impact their teams. So I think most of the time it's driven by the product and design team.
Awesome. And maybe one last question here. You mentioned Full Story earlier. You mentioned Miro, of course, that you use just for kind of all across the life cycle. What else is in your tool stack to really enable now remote collaboration for almost everyone now?
Yeah, so I think what I want to mention is besides some of the tools we use, um, it's actually like a shift in terms of mentality, especially now we're all remote. I think in the past, we take granted of things that are just physical in the office. You know, can have those hallway conversations. You
Mm-hmm.
can see each other. You can have lunch together, walk for a coffee. But you know, those things are gone, at least for a short moment. Hopefully, we'll go back to that pretty soon. But I think it's
Right.
more about how can you build or keep building those relationships while you're being remote. So I think some of the tools we've been trying to use is like remote icebreakers, team building activities. I know there are companies who are helping people to do some like fun games as a team remotely. That's pretty fun. And I think having that mentality that you need to allocate some time, whether it's 5 to 10 minutes of each, maybe not each meeting, but one meeting of that week, you could use to build relationship with your team. Whether it's getting to know them more, you know, sometimes we do two truths and a lie. Sometimes we have a probing question, you know, tell a story about your childhood. Just, you know, get to know them that they wouldn't talk about when you just chat about work. I think it has been working out a lot for our teams.
Yeah, definitely. I think the theme that I'm hearing is to have a lot of intentionality to really build rapport with others, because that really helps to unlock collaboration on a different and maybe even deeper level, and then collaborating throughout the process becomes a little bit easier.
Definitely.
So I don't see any other questions here, but the great thing is that this board is kind of everlasting. You can come in here and drop in your questions, and if we see a question, we'll go ahead and answer that. But just to wrap things up here, so we have a couple more sessions that are upcoming, of course, throughout the entire event. So if you want to see those, you can go ahead and actually click on this link directly on the board. Another thing is we always do recurring webinars here every single week at Miro. So we have a full calendar if you want to get to know Miro a little bit more, see how others are using it, especially for workshops, meetings, ideation and collaboration sessions in general. And then finally, last two things here, looks like Upwork is definitely hiring. So go ahead and take a look at some of the career opportunities you might have here at Upwork. And then lastly, of course, if you're looking for kind of a company-wide collaboration tool that's really at its core an online whiteboard, you can take a look at this site, this landing page here on our Miro site. And you can also feel free to reach out to myself as well. I'm happy to help and kind of direct you to the right teams and right people. But thank you so much, Can, for joining us and for just taking us through your journey to product design, kind of giving us an insider look at how things work at Upwork. Really happy to have you here. And thanks everyone else for joining this coffee chat session.
Thanks, guys.